For example, Maimonides writes that the whole story about the Garden of Eden never took place. It's metaphorical. He writes this about the Chamor, the ass which spoke in Bilam, in Bamidbar. He says, it's a dream. And there is, even in Kabbalah, there is a whole concept that everything in the Torah is somewhere metaphorical. Some of it may happen here in this world, some may not have happened. It happened somewhere else. Friends, the lecture which I want to give this morning, the final lecture as far as I'm concerned, is, I believe, a lecture which time has not yet come. Because in many ways it is wishful thinking. And some people will accuse me of some kind of naivete. I should really give this lecture in another 50 years. The trouble is, I'm not sure I will be around. Unless HaKadosh Baruch Hu will move science forward and man suddenly becomes or immortal, or at least living many more years, like our ancestors did, 700, 800 years. So in case we meet at that time once more in Limut, then you can complain. But the reason why I want to give this lecture now is also for very ecocentric reasons. And that is that in another 50 years, 100 years, I will be able to say to you, I told you so. There's no greater naches. This lecture you may compare, and this is not an expression of humility at my side, with a book which was written in 1873. I don't know if anybody is still there from these days. But there was a man at the time by the name of Jules Verne, who wrote this famous book of his, Around the World in 80 Days. Remember, there was an English-British fellow by the name of Phileas Fogg who was sent around the world, and the achievement would be if he could do that within 80 days. He nearly did not make it, but because of time change between different countries and continents, he did make it. Just at the edge. And when Julius Verne wrote this book, this was a very daring book. It was daring because who would ever think about the possibility that somebody could go around the world in 80 days? It would take years. And therefore people complained about this book, that this was so much overstating man's possibilities, scientific possibilities, that there was even an outrage against this book. And I remember when in Holland, from where I come in Amsterdam, we had to read this book in a Dutch translation. We speculated in the classroom if perhaps Phileas Fogg could also do it in 40 days. Or in 20 days. But these were the wild dreamers who would think in these terms. They were not taken serious at all. I was one of them. And then, when we read this book today, it's completely outdated. It is simplistic. It is not at all anymore the world in which we live. We are living in days of space travel, where the concept of time has completely changed. Where there are other measuring staffs which we use today, different dimensions. Some of the most strangest things that happen in our days is that science, its breakthroughs, were not the normal developments which normally take place within science, step by step. But there were enormous radical changes, which nobody could have expected. And Jules Verne, who had a tremendous fantasy, was not able to think about. We have seen in our own days, specifically within the scientific community, breakthroughs so beyond the imagination of people who lived a little earlier that it is no longer speaking in terms of evolution and a normal development which we normally speak about when we speak about man's inquiry. In Israel, where I live, as you probably know, in 2004, Ilan Ramon, an Israeli astronaut, traveled around the world, and this is the information which I got, and I apologize if it is wrong, because I cannot really imagine this, but so it was stated in a journal which I lived. He did with the other astronauts 6 million miles within 16 days. And even when it may be wrong, these incredible amounts of kilometers or miles, what happened over there was something out of all ordinary expectation. Badly enough, he did not make it home. But I just remind you, and you will understand later why I tell you that in this particular space traveling, he took a Sefer Torah with, a little Sefer Torah which came originally from Holland, from where I come. It got lost when it exploded and all the astronauts badly enough died. But speed has become something beyond the imagination. There is in the Kabbalah, in Jewish mystical thinking, in the Jewish mystical tradition, there is a concept which states that when we get closer to the Messianic age, then things start to move faster. Things become speedy. And it's compared very beautifully with the days or Friday afternoon in a Jewish home. When you have to get yourself ready for Shabbat, it becomes speedy. You have to get things ready. And since the Messianic age is considered to be the ultimate Shabbat, therefore, in case we live in a Friday condition, and we are speeding up to this moment of called the Messianic age, then perhaps according to Kabbalistic interpretation, it means that there is meaning behind this incredible speed. We are in a Jewish family, the sum total of this world, and we need to make ourselves ready when the Shabbat arrives. Now, I'm not sure, to be quite honest, and perhaps I'm too skeptical, I'm not sure that we are living in the times just before the days of the Mashiach. Halavai, we say in Hebrew. May it be like that. And I'm always very, very, very skeptical, because I've learned over the years, as many of you have as well, that very often we thought that the Mashiach was around the corner. I just remind you of Shabbatai Tzvi in the 17th century, and on the end it did not happen, and people got not just frustrated, but completely outdone and completely overwhelmed that they could no longer function. And we have to be careful that that does not happen to us today, when we constantly keep on speaking about that the Mashiach is any moment coming. We believe he will come. But if it is tomorrow, or another 100 years or 1,000 years, I don't think anybody can say for sure. But what I do admit is that we are living in very unusual times.